What's going on, FA Nation? My name is Justin Fensterman, along with Ryan Hallam, and this is another edition of Fantasy Alarm Sports Talk. Hallam, another week of domination, getting ready right up on a silver platter for you. How the heck are you, sir? It seems like it's been forever.
I think Monday is just our day now. It seems like it. And right on schedule, sir, another 49er injury. What is going on here? This is ridiculous. Other than that, I'm happy to be with you as always. I always have a great time doing this with you. And the half hour, it just goes so fast.
Yes, it does. It does. And we've covered a lot of ground because you and I have been working together each of the last few Mondays. We did something on Superflex for quarterbacks. We've done tight end strategy. We have also done running back as well and talked about handcuffs versus standalone value. So we're going to tap into the wide receiver position and talk about one of my favorite topics, Ryan. One of my favorite people get to talk about one of my favorite topics, whether you like it or not. Nah, if you really don't, we can change the topic. Auctions, though, dude. Auctions. This is a big time, and again, you know how much I love fantasy football auctions. I think once you do an auction, it will make you a better fantasy football player when it comes from the draft perspective. And the thing about auctions, as we've seen in some industry auctions that have taken place over the last few weeks, Ryan, you can get two guys who are going in the first round on your team. You have more control over your team's destiny. I saw someone, I believe it was Dave Richard from CBS, in the Kings Classic, take Saquon Barkley and Christian McCaffrey.
Wow. What did that cost? That had to be 60 apiece.
It was at least, I believe one was 65, one was 66. May both have been 66.
You know what? With the way that I feel like a lot of auctions go, I can see that happen, and you still field a pretty comfortable team. And, you still have the waiver wire during the season, and a lot of times that's just as important as the draft.
Absolutely. But at the same time, it just shows, an auction just shows you can build around really spending on your running backs. Now, in auctions, Ryan, generally, what do you do? I'm wondering what you do, and I'm wondering if we have similar strategies. How do you handle budget for positions in auction? Does it come down to the player? Does it come down to the position? Let's get inside your mind and talk about some of your general auction strategies.
To me, it comes down to two positions. That's the wide receivers and the running backs. I don't really spend up big on a quarterback. I don't really spend up big on tight ends in general. Obviously,
so
sometimes.
Very quickly, Ryan, if I could stop you right there. What is spending up big? Let's define that, because I've been asked a lot about this lately. People have said to me, you said you don't spend much on quarterback. Well, what's much? Is it 10 or more on those positions? Is it for one of the top guys, one of the elite guys, like a Travis Kelce who's going for 30 plus? So what would you say is your line on spending on those positions?
I'm not spending 30 on a tight end at all. I would say my max is probably 15, and I don't think I do that most of the time. To me, there's really three tight ends that are worth paying for, and that's Kelce, Kittle, and Andrews. I even kind of take Ertz out of that equation. I know they're banged up again, but if you look at the first half of last season, when everybody was healthy, he wasn't doing very well. It was at the end of the year when the entire receiving core went to hell that he became a bigger part of the offense. I still think Dallas Goedert is going to be as involved, if not more, this year. So to me, while I think Zach Ertz is very good and will be a top 10 tight end, I don't view him in that 3-4 range. So I'm not paying for him. Hunter Henry, I feel, is overrated. So once I get out of that first 3 or 4, I almost prefer the guys that people think of in the 8 to 12 range than that 4, 5, 6 range. I don't really love Austin Hooper landing in Cleveland. I'd much rather have a guy who took his place in Hunter Henry. So if I'm not going to take one of the first few, I'm probably going to take guys in the 8, 9, 10, 11 range, and I'll probably take 2. Just to have it set. But I'm not going to spend – I probably don't spend $30 on both my tight ends. Never mind one.
Darren Waller's there at 10. Are you going up to 11 or are you stopping?
That's a close one because I do like him. And
I think, love him, man.
I think people are overrating these other people that the Raiders brought in. I'd probably go to 11 for Waller.
See, so this is why I asked you what I asked you, because, and I've been talking about this a little bit more, and I've been guilty of this as well. If I focus so much on a budget for a position and not the player itself, when guys like Darren Waller come up, I freeze. I want the players so badly, but I'm stuck to my leash that I put myself on for the budget for a tight end, knowing, okay, let's just say I do go after a Waller for $11. Then maybe I get someone to back him up for $1 after that. Because I know I'm not going to go in on the next guy. I'm not going to go in on, let's just say he's brought up before Andrews. I'm now not going to go in on Andrews. That's not going to happen. But that's why, and I say this all the time, you have to have the list of players that you love right in front of you so you can see that, so you can know, okay, look, generally I don't spend this much on tight ends, but I love Darren Waller so much. I think he could do almost what he did last season. Then I'm going to spend the extra few bucks on Darren Waller. Ryan, it's a mistake I made. I used to hold myself to $1 for a tight end. I was the guy grabbing Austin Seferian-Jenkins and being like, I'm going to play hero. And guess what happens when you try to play hero?
You lost.
You become a nemesis to your own team. That's the problem.
Well, and that's another thing I think we've talked about a few other things, and this is just general draft strategies, is I don't think you can go in with a hard and fast plan that you're unwilling to go off of. You go in off and you're going to say, I'm going to spend, say, $14 on tight end, and that's my plan. I won't spend $1 more than that. And then Waller goes a little bit cheaper than you thought, and you really like him. So, all right, so you spend $1 or $2 more on a tight end. You pull back on wide receiver or running back, especially wide receiver because there's just so many of them. I just feel like you have to be able to flex and to pivot in drafts when things happen that you don't expect because you're in it with 11 other people typically, and you have no idea what other people are going to do during that draft. So you have to be willing to move on the fly, to change on the fly a little bit when things happen that you didn't expect. I mean, ADP is a guide. It's not what's going to happen, or auction values that we have in our draft guide. That's not necessarily how it's going to play out. It's for you to look at and kind of figure, but things happen differently, and you have to be able to change with that.
You have to look at every projection you see as a range at this point, because analysts are going to have vastly different opinions. And when it comes to something like an auction as well, this is where you have to figure it out based off what you're seeing and what you're experiencing in mock auctions as well. You have to see the values for yourself so you can set your own parameters on how much you're going to spend, especially if you're going per position. And that's where if you like a tight end, you're going after that tight end. You like a quarterback, you want to be the person that bids on Mahomes. You're going to be spending a lot of money, and then you're going to be very jealous later when you see someone like Drew Brees going for $1. But that's the way it is. You have to know if you're going to, because Patrick Mahomes is likely going to be put out there, Ryan, in most of the auctions I've been in. You can tell me if you disagree. I say that we see at least Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes first 10 nominations, most auctions. What do you have to say about that?
Definitely. And, whether it's from people who want them or people who don't want them, it's smart. Let's get that money out and get it on the table and get it out of some other people's wallets so we can. The only way that I could see myself paying up for Mahomes or maybe Lamar Jackson, if you're in a 6-point per passing touchdown league, I can swallow it a little bit better. Because, the guy could easily throw 40 touchdowns again.
Right.
So that, there was just, I'm in a super flex league now where I picked Mahomes second overall. It was 6 points per passing touchdowns and bonuses for 300 yards. The guy can do both every single game. So, there are, obviously, we're talking kind of general rules here, and things change also with your league settings, which are also always important to look at. And I know you preach that all the time. But in general, yeah, I'm not paying $30 for a quarterback. I'm not paying $30 for a tight end. Those other two positions is where I'm going to spend most of my money.
Let's talk about those other two positions where we're going to spend the meat of our money, and that's running back and wide receiver. Do you go into auctions? Because I used to go into auctions being like, I have to put this bulk of money on my running backs. It has to be that much. My wide receivers, I'll wait for dollar days for the most part and get my one wide receiver, and that's it. But for running backs, I'm putting it all. Now I'm more best player available or best value available at the time, which means I'm constantly paying attention until my max bid goes down a bit, and then I can take a little bit of a break and start scanning through other teams. Ryan, do you have a certain amount that you put, or at least a range that you put on running backs versus wide receivers for your auction strategy?
I got to be honest, and this is going to be kind of terrible, is that I don't. I really just go with what happens.
At all.
I really, because especially wide receivers to me. In the auctions that I've been in, the prices I've seen have been crazy ranges. Like, I've seen Michael Thomas go for $55. I've seen Michael Thomas go for $31. Like,
$31 for Michael Thomas?
They've been receivers are all over the place. I never know where they're going to land. So I kind of got to go there and see, kind of where wide receivers play out. I've seen, Michael Thomas go for this much money, and then somebody like DeAndre Hopkins, like $20 less or $15 less. Wide receivers to me is really hard to figure. You really got to go with kind of what your room is doing.
All right. Let's stop right there and give this announcement very quickly. If you're in an auction, and this is a redraft auction, so
yes.
no keeper alignment or anything, and you see Michael Thomas on that board for $31, you're clicking bid up until at least $45. Then you have to make a decision. But if you're seeing nobody else be interested in Michael Thomas, and this could be the first, because here's the deal. Ryan, you just said play the room. That first player that's put up there, you'll see either everybody will be hesitant or everybody will be going in. You'll see it. When all of a sudden you'd expect the bidding to slow down, you still see 5 teams in there. You know that there are people that are anxious to bid and get everything started, and this is the first player. If you see only 2 by the time you're hitting that late 20s range on that first player, no matter who it is, especially if it's a top-tier player at a position, then you have something to think about. Ryan, Michael Thomas for $31. I don't care if he's part of my plan or not. I'm going in every single time. $31 is criminal. Too cheap.
And that's and that kind of goes back to what he's saying. You have to know what's going on and adjust on the fly. Something like that you don't expect. And maybe you said you come into it, I'm not spending $30 on a wide receiver, and then that happens. Well, that's the time you break your plan and do it.
Right, exactly. Man, I can only imagine what some of the other receivers on the next tier, let's say in the next few tiers down, go for. I'm talking about the Calvin Ridley tier, let's just say, where you're seeing everybody going, starting with Adam Thielen, if Michael Thomas is going for $31. So let's talk about that range when it comes to wide receivers. So you have Michael Thomas, who in a lot of leagues will be going for late 40s, maybe hits 50-51. And if you want Michael Thomas, by the way, Ryan, and you can tell me what your limit is on this guy, but if you want Michael Thomas in a 3 wide receiver starting league, you've made the decision that when he's put out there, that's going to be your guy. What's the max that you would put on him? Because if he goes into the 50s, even 50-51, I'm still willing to put that dollar amount. Once he reaches that mid-50s to late, that's when I say no. But I think at this time, we know what we're getting with Michael Thomas because he can't guard Mike for a reason.
He absolutely is. And, hypothetically, I'd say maybe 45, but honestly, he is someone I almost never end up with just because I don't like to put that much into wide receiver, especially in 2020, where I just feel like it's 50 deep of somewhat quality guys to sink a fifth of my salary into one guy. To me is a little much when there's so many guys in the 20s that aren't going to be that far off.
But Ryan, we're about to give a list of dollar value receivers, and you'll be able to construct an even better, more expensive wide receiving core. But you can get Michael Thomas, still pay for running backs, and then virtually go dollar value receivers the rest of the way. I don't advise it. I'm just saying it's possible because the range is huge. Guys that are going for $2, I've seen go in snake drafts in the 8th and 9th round. It's true, Ryan. And that's why I'm telling everybody that if you're not in an auction this year, 2021 goals, you are playing in a darn auction. Tweet us. We'll answer all of your auction questions. They're more fun, more controlling your own team's destiny. I like that very, very much. And that's why seeing that value at receiver, the dollar value, it's incredible, Ryan, because it gives you comfort that there are players there. Who is one of your favorite dollar value receivers?
Well, let's see. One of my favorites is going to be the Raiders' Hunter Renfro. He got hurt last year. The Raiders brought in a lot of weapons, but there's something to be said for the guy lack of a better word, he's going to catch it. It's just that reliable target that I think a guy like Derek Carr actually really needs. And at the end of the year, when he came back from injury, he finished the year very strong. I know they drafted Henry Ruggs and Lynn Bowden and Brian Edwards and all this other nonsense, and I guess Tyrell Williams is going to be good this year. But Renfro is just that guy, especially obviously in PPR leagues, because that's where it's going to be his strength. I think the guy could be good for 5 to 6 catches every game. I think he's going to be the most reliable receiver on the team. They brought in a lot of rookies, and I kind of question what their contribution is going to be this year. Even a guy like Henry Ruggs, I think Renfro is just the safest play on that team, and somebody that I really like.
You can argue that every wide receiver on this team will be $1.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't see Ruggs going for $2.
He maybe just
He's
because
borderline, but Tyrell Williams, I've gotten him at the end of multiple drafts. He's going for $1. That's it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of hype right now on Lynn Bowden, but I don't really see that making the move off of $1. I think they're going to be a little bit better this year. I don't think they're going to be great. I don't think all of a sudden Derek Carr's turned into Johnny Unitas, but Google him if you don't know who he is. That's a really old reference, and I'm sorry. But
the demographics there.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to go get my Metamucil. I'll be right back. I just don't think Derek Carr is all of a sudden
going to be on after Wapner at this point. Seriously.
I don't think the offense is going to be all of a sudden great. So I don't know. I think Renfro is a really nice, safe option for $1.
Now, let's talk about another player who I've seen go for $1, maybe borderline $2 player. And this is just a player that I don't have any shares of. I don't plan on having any shares of. But looking at the offense, something can happen. And this is a situation where if you want to go after those players who maybe aren't targeted a lot, but do have that potential in certain games to be able to score a big touchdown, a.k.a. the Stephon Diggs effect, Robbie Anderson. Now, Teddy Bridgewater's lack of strength in his arm really turns me off to Robbie Anderson. You could say the same thing on this, Hallam. Curtis Samuel, also $1. So any interest in either one of these guys? Because I just continue to scratch my head, and I don't really want either of them on my team.
No, the only real draw to me is that they're basically free. Curtis Samuel, you saw a lot last year. They tried to hand him the ball because he really just wasn't clicking with, Kyle Allen sucked, but still, he wasn't getting involved in the passing game, so they were handing the ball to him more. You're hearing a lot of good things out of camp. Obviously, it's a new offense with Matt Rule. So things could be different, but, I see there's so much just coach speak going on because we have no preseason to go with. And unless the guy's a real ass, the coach can be like, this guy sucks. So it's really this year to me is harder than ever to try to figure out what the hell's going to happen when we kick off on week 1, because all we got is the coaches and the coordinators are saying, and maybe a beat writer or two, but it's just like, I don't like Curtis Samuel. I don't think he's a possession receiver, which is nice. Teddy Bridgewater is not a long ball thrower, like you said. So could he work with Bridgewater? Maybe he could. Robbie Anderson, to me, I didn't love the landing spot at all. I was never really a big Robbie Anderson fan. Sorry, as a Jets fan, he was just really up and down to me. He showed like a few really good games last year where I was starting to like, maybe I have to second guess myself on this. But overall, I think that's DJ Moore and Christian McCaffrey are going to be the bulk of that offense. I kind of like Ian Thomas at tight end.
Oh, don't tell me that. Please don't tell me that. Because I'm trying to talk myself into going this low where Ian Thomas, in maybe one league, because we play in a lot of leagues, just if all else fails, go Ian Thomas for that $1 tight end. And I'm trying to tell myself, he's a backup, strictly a backup. But I have him as a backup in 2 leagues already, Ryan. And I've been debating, and I didn't want to bring him to your attention because you just mentioned positivity out of Ian Thomas. And now I have to convince myself, hey, I'm not starting this guy. So that's why I didn't bring him to the table.
I definitely like him a lot more as a 2 because I'm not sure. Obviously he showed some flashes. He's a very athletic guy. I think he's, the hands are a little bit questionable, and that's the problem. But he's a guy like, I'm not going to say Evan Engram, but I don't think he's that far off. He's a very athletic kid, And when he has the ball in his hands and he's, in the field, he's real tough to bring down for safeties. Linebackers I think are going to struggle to cover him. But it's the consistency that worries me about Thomas. Obviously, Greg Olsen is finally and forever gone. So this is going to be his attempt to shine. I don't know that I trust him enough to be my one and only tight end, but I do love the potential an awful lot.
Now, you and I, because this is what good hosts do, is that we share our information beforehand, so just so we can see what we're both thinking about. And I have to bring up this next wide receiver that you could get for $1. And it's boring, and it's not fun, but obviously he's still playing for a reason, 36. Larry Fitzgerald. I mean, look, he was targeted a lot last year. What, in any rhyme or reason, should we be convinced that this guy is done? Yet, he's still playing. Ryan, this is a player that I've taken at the end of drafts multiple times. I have not been in any of my active auctions except for one best ball yet. But if that's the case, I am going to spend $1 on Larry Fitzgerald. I'm willing to do it much better towards the end of the year last year.
And here's my thing. He still was targeted 100 times last year, 109 times. I mean, that's pretty impressive. The touchdowns have slowly been declining down to 4 last year. But here's the biggest reason why I kind of like Larry Fitzgerald. And that's because I don't trust Christian Kirk yet. I'm not all on the Christian Kirk bandwagon. So if he goes down, which has basically happened every year of his career, guess who's there? Old standby Larry Fitzgerald is still there. Still going to catch the ball. He's keeping himself in shape. He's working harder than most of these people out there because he's old but he's old. He's probably 35 years old. But keeping him. I feel like he works harder than anybody else out there to be the best. He just has that just mentality of a winner. And I don't really feel that way about Christian Kirk. So after DeAndre Hopkins, I think that Larry Fitzgerald has the ability to be a pretty decent option for you this year.
I mean, this is a player, again, that caught 75 receptions. I mean, over 10 yards per catch as well. So, and he's still playing for a reason because he still has enough. Larry Fitzgerald is not one of those athletes. It's not a spotlight thing. It's not that he's refusing to share the spotlight. He's one of the more humble athletes out there. If you look over the last 20 years, he knows he can still play and he loves to play. And that's one of those situations where, okay, hey, Kyler Murray's supposed to take this next step. That's what a lot of analysts are saying. That's been one of the most overused phrases for the last 4 months. Kyler Murray's going to take that next step. Okay, I don't want to necessarily invest that much into Hopkins. All right, $1, Larry Fitzgerald. It's kind of like the same thing with what I'm saying with the Browns. I'm not sure what to think when it comes to the Browns receivers, so I'll invest a few bucks into Jarvis Landry. Not saying he's a dollar value guy. He's not. But that's how I handle certain offenses that are being hyped and still get a little bit of skin in the game. I have no problem with Larry Fitzgerald for $1.
Not at all. Yeah, like you said, it's not exciting. It's not a sexy pick. Not anymore. But reliability is awfully important.
Yep. Let's continue the trend here of non-sexy because you know what? That's the thing. Dollar value receivers aren't all home run hitters. Some of them are contact hitters, like Randall Cobb. Great situation he's in. 2 oft-injured players. When I say with Brandon Cooks, yes, you could give me the whole, he's been healthy for the most part. Yeah, the guy's had multiple concussions. I know that hasn't resulted in a lot of missed games, but a lot of concussions. And Will Fuller could be great. Problem is, he hasn't been able to stay healthy to be great. So now you're taking those two and you're putting them in the equation with Randall Cobb targeted over 80 times in Dallas last year. Another player that you could get for $1, maybe $2. He's borderline, but I'll continue to get multiple shares of Randall Cobb. And Hallam, last year I had a good amount of shares of Randall Cobb, but I grew impatient after I believe it was week 4 or 5, dropped him, then he started producing.
Yeah, and once Amari Cooper, busted his ankle, Cobb really got a chance, and he absolutely shined. And like you said, I can't think of 2 more injury-prone guys than Brandon Cooks and Will Fuller. And even Kenny Stills goes down sometimes. And,
right.
You can say that Cooks has been healthy for the most part, but he missed several weeks with a concussion last year. And then when he came back, he was basically a decoy. Like, the Rams didn't let him play for, 6 weeks last year. That's really concerning. I don't take concussions into it too much until it gets to this level. Like Sterling Shepard, I'm really scared about Sterling Shepard and concussions now because he was forced to miss multiple weeks last year. So that's it. And Cobb is just, again, another guy like Fitzgerald. He's going to catch the ball. Just throw it to him. And Deshaun Watson's a great quarterback. So Deshaun Watson, if he hooks up with Deshaun Watson, that could be some really nice return. And I think he's definitely worth $1 or $2.
Yeah, you mentioned, by the way, the Giants receivers. And I'm at the point when it comes to Sterling Shepard that when I see how close Darius Slayton and not Evan Engram, Golden Tate are when it comes to average draft position to him, it makes me just want to go after one of those other guys. Less risk.
I'm a big Slayton guy. I actually just picked him in a draft about 20 minutes before we started. But yeah, I like Tate too. When all three are healthy, at least last year, which wasn't very often.
Not at all.
Yeah, he was kind of the odd man out when all three were healthy, so he might start the season out a little slow. But Shepard and Engram, probably one of them will be done by the end of September. So. And for, again, dollar value possession receivers, that's what it seems like. Dollar value guys are all possession receivers because they're not, they don't put up the big sexy numbers.
Well, that's because they don't have a lot of touchdowns, but that's okay. That's fine. As long as and I try to say this, focus more, especially when evaluating players on your own now, focus more on targets than touchdowns. All right? Because a lot more of those targets that could be similar to last year can lead to more touchdowns. That's why I'm fine if a receiver has been targeted a certain amount overall, and let's even say they miss games and you take that into effect, I'm still going to look to draft that receiver. And someone who was targeted over 50 times that is also on your list that you sent me, Hallam, Steven Sims. Another guy, one of my favorite dollar value players. I've talked about him multiple shows now because when it comes to the Washington football team, there's not much in there. And I know all of you are going to be like, oh, but what about Trey Quinn? Ha ha. Well, new year, and we saw this guy targeted over 50 times. Who else on this receiving core is going to dominate that much? You got McLaurin? Then who? They can't even get their running back situation figured out. Hallam, this guy costs $1. That's it. Maybe in the next 2 weeks, he becomes a $2 to $3 player. Right now, still $1.
Yeah, and everyone's falling in love with Antonio Gibson is like the flavor of the week. And the kid could do well. Again, with the rookie coming in, and they're going to ask him to run the ball and catch the ball and block.
Well, that's the thing, Ryan. I think because of what's gone on with Darius Geis, I think now he focuses more on the rushing attack side of things, which could open up more in the passing game for someone like a Sims.
Absolutely, and Sims is not flashy at all. He's certainly not Terry McLaurin. He doesn't have a scary nickname or anything like that.
We're talking dollar value receivers.
But he gets the job done. And I really liked what I saw from Sims towards the end of last year. Became a little bit bigger part of the offense, produced when given the opportunity. And who knows, maybe we have Alex Smith at quarterback this year, who, as much as I trashed him over his career for crippling my 49ers salary cap, is going to be a heck of a lot better back there than Dwayne Haskins throwing the ball, in my opinion. So if they get a little bit better quarterback situation, I think he's a guy who can find just a hole in the defense, sit down, and just wait and catch the ball and move the chain.
Do you really think there's going to be a quarterback competition?
I don't think Alex Smith came all the way back to just sit and hold the clipboard now.
Because if that's the case, because I've been kind of debating going back and forth, and this is where, and Ryan alluded to it before, you have to be careful with every headline that you read. You have two choices. You can either read the entire article and see what you can find that's truthful from that, and if you read enough of them, you'll see some kind of consistency, or you lay off the headlines. Because you can't go and follow every single headline that you read. They want to get your clicks. They want to make sure that they get your attention. That's what it's all about. And I've seen a lot from the Washington football team. And I talked with Jen Piacenti about this on shows recently. And it's just, if you have Alex Smith there instead of Haskins, who's still developing, wow, that adds a lot of value to those receivers in DC.
Yeah, I still don't think they're all going to score 30 points a game. But, there was games where Haskins, he just couldn't get out of his own. And some of it was the offensive line, and they did lose Trent Williams. Oh, Trent Williams didn't play last year anyway. But, he didn't have a lot going for him, poor Dwayne Haskins in his rookie year. But I just still saw a lot that I didn't like, and I don't know. I think it's going to take some time to maybe pick some of that stuff up if he does at all. So we'll see with Alex Smith. We saw the video with his family with the champagne, and that was all sweet and good and everything. And I thought he was limping a little bit in it, which scared me. But he's practicing. So, I mean, I have to figure you didn't go through 2 years of excruciating surgeries and rehab and everything else just to prove that you could stand back on the sidelines. I wouldn't think. I mean, it can't be a money thing for him. And he made a truckload of money when he was a kid when there was no rookie salary cap. So I got to figure he's in it to try to come back. And I kind of doubt it too, but I never thought we'd see him on a field again. So the fact that he's this close is at least, if nothing else, a good story.
Yep, and we are talking a lot about auction. That's been the focus on Fantasy Alarm Sports Talk with Hallam and myself. And just to give you guys a little bit more of what that $1 to $2 value range for wide receivers is, I saw in industry auctions recently guys like Michael Pittman going for $2, Rashad Perriman, $2. Golden Tate, we mentioned, I've been seeing him go for $2. That just shows how that you get your elite wide receiver. And I'm not saying go all the way down to dollar days, but it just shows you there's a wide range and you can put a little bit more stock in running back. Not saying that you should have hard budgets for either position, but when it comes to those wide receivers, those low end twos and all the threes, they're going for $1 or $2. That's it, Hallam.
Yeah, and I love Pittman as the guy you brought up. I know I've been kind of trashing rookies all day, but wide receivers I think are a little bit different. He's coming into a good situation. T.Y. Hilton, God knows if he's going to be healthy. You got Phil Rivers throwing the ball now, who's I know he throws a lot of interceptions, but he's a much better thrower of the football than Jacoby Brissett is. So I think that offense, and he's got a great offensive line. I think the Colts have a chance to really score some points this year.
Yes. By the way, T.Y. Hilton, I do have a couple of shares of him, only because he slipped down to 6th round territory. So at this point, Hallam, I mean, if you're telling me that this guy's going to be my wide receiver 3 and I don't have to overdraft him, okay, sure, no problem. Happy to have him at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't argue with that. If he's your 3rd wide receiver, that you take that every single day of the week.
Right. But if I'm pushing wide receiver down to a certain point and it's like, okay, great, I could get T.Y. Hilton as my number 1. Don't do that. Don't do that. That's not how you dominate. And we're all about dominating. He's Ryan Hallam. Give him a follow on Twitter at Fighting Chance. I'm Justin Fensterman at FenceD Sports. Ryan, it's been great. Always fun talking wide receivers fantasy football with you, especially auctions.
Absolutely. And of course, go to Fantasy Alarm. The draft guide is still out there. I know we have a deal for like every sport for the rest of the year since there's about 8 going right now. Everybody is just, kicking our own asses every day, getting the best content we can out there for you to help you win, help you dominate, help you just, get all the bragging rights and all the money over all your friends.
You just gave me a very weird visual, Ryan Hallam. But he's Hallam. I'm FenceD. Fantasy Alarm. The family is always with you. We always dominate. No other option. We just win.